Meghan Markle's pathological cosplay exposed. Meghan would have known instantly as she was sitting on the floor wearing what she was wearing with her legs in that position, wearing a white shirt. She wouldn't have known exactly what she was recreating. I'm sorry, there's no way around that. Those words, spoken by celebrity photographer Nikki Johnston in late 2024, confirmed what millions had suspected for years, but few in the mainstream media dared to say. Meghan Markle's recreation of Princess Diana's iconic poses wasn't accidental, it wasn't coincidental, it was deliberate, calculated, and according to experts, potentially pathological. For nearly a decade, observers had noticed the eerie similarities between Meghan's public appearances and Diana's most memorable photographs. The hand-on-hip pose in Africa, the cross-legged floor sitting, the head tilt, the clothing choices, the jewelry. Every detail seemed choreographed to evoke Diana's memory, to draw comparisons, to position Meghan as the People's Princess reborn. But when Harper's Bazaar published a December 2024 cover shoot featuring Meghan in a pose that exactly mirrored one of Diana's most famous photographs, the pretense of coincidence finally collapsed. A professional photographer who had worked with countless celebrities confirmed what his trained eye could see. This level of recreation doesn't happen by accident. What drove Meghan to spend years studying, copying, and embodying a woman who died before she ever met Prince Harry? How does Harry feel watching his wife dress up as his dead mother? And what does this obsessive behavior reveal about Meghan's psychology, her relationship with reality, and her willingness to manipulate the man she married? Join us as we uncover the disturbing truth behind Meghan Markle's Diana obsession, a story that goes far beyond fashion choices and reveals something deeply unsettling about the woman who became the Duchess of Sussex. It all began quietly decades ago, long before the world knew Meghan Markle's name. Princess Diana died on August 31, 1997, in a car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. She was just 36 years old. The world mourned. Over 2.5 billion people watched her funeral on September 6, 1997. She became, in death, even more iconic than she had been in life, her image frozen in time, perfect and untouchable. Meghan Markle was 16 years old when Diana died, a high school student in Los Angeles with dreams of becoming an actress. By her own later admission, she had followed Diana's story, watched the royal wedding on July 29, 1981, when she was just 41 days old, been fascinated by the fairy tale that had turned into tragedy. But Meghan's interest in Diana went beyond normal public fascination. According to multiple sources, she studied Diana obsessively. She collected books about her. She watched documentaries. She analyzed photographs. And somewhere along the way, according to reports that emerged years later, she allegedly created a vision board that included Prince Harry. The obsession became visible to the public in the summer of 2016, shortly before Meghan would meet Harry on that famous blind date on July 1, 2016. Photographs surfaced of Meghan during a trip to Rwanda in March 2016, taken when she was working as an ambassador for World Vision, a humanitarian organization focused on children's welfare. In those photographs, Meghan stood in the African sunshine wearing a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, hands on hips, sunglasses on. The pose was instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with Diana's iconography. It was nearly identical to photographs of Diana during her 1997 visit to Angola, where she walked through a minefield to draw attention to the landmine crisis. At the time, few made the connection publicly. Meghan was still relatively unknown, just an actress on a cable show that most people in Britain had never heard of. But looking back, knowing what would happen just months later when she began dating Harry, the Rwanda photographs took on new significance. Was Meghan already auditioning for the role of Harry's wife? Was she deliberately positioning herself as Diana 2.0, knowing that such comparisons would appeal to Harry, would make him see her not just as a girlfriend but as someone who could fulfill his mother's legacy? The pattern continued and intensified after Meghan and Harry's relationship became public in November 2016. Every public appearance seemed designed to evoke Diana. The clothing choices weren't just similar to Diana's style, they were often exact recreations of outfits Diana had worn decades earlier. In December 2017, during a visit to Nottingham as part of her first official engagement with Harry, Meghan wore a camel-colored wrap coat by Canadian brand Smythe. The coat, the styling, the pose were all reminiscent of Diana's own camel coat appearances from the 1980s and 90s. In September 2018, during the Sussex tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and Tonga, Meghan wore a white sleeveless shift dress by Australian designer Karen G. The dress, the setting, the hand-on-belly pose to emphasize her early pregnancy all echoed Diana's own pregnancy announcements and appearances. In March 2021, for the bombshell Oprah Winfrey interview, Meghan wore a black dress with white lotus flower embroidery by Armani. The color choice, black in a garden setting, deliberately recalled Diana's own famous revenge dress, the black Christina Stambolian dress Diana wore on the night Charles admitted his affair with Camilla on television in June 1994. But it was the Harper's Bazaar cover shoot in December 2024 that finally made the pattern undeniable. The magazine featured Meghan in a spread photographed by a high-profile fashion photographer. In one image, Meghan sat cross-legged on the floor, wearing a white shirt, her hair loose, her expression contemplative. The composition, the pose, the styling were all strikingly similar to a famous photograph of Diana taken by renowned photographer Patrick de Marchelier in 1997, just months before her death. In that original Diana photograph, the princess sat on the floor in a similar cross-legged position, wearing white, looking directly at the camera with a mixture of vulnerability and strength. It had become one of the most iconic images of Diana, representing her authenticity, her willingness to be seen without royal pretense, her connection with ordinary people. And now Meghan had recreated it, down to the smallest details. Royal commentator Tash, analyzing the photograph during a December 2024 broadcast with Dan Wooten, didn't mince words. I've been saying this for a number of years myself. Her cosplaying of Diana is honestly psychological. It's pathological. It's something that is so obvious to anybody that ever followed Diana. Tash continued, her voice carrying both frustration and concern. I think she still actively sits there and must study Diana. We've seen so many instances of this. This is the stuff that psychologists train for. And it is a way, I think, for Meghan to get people to talk about her. It is a way for Meghan, I believe, to manipulate Harry in a really twisted sort of way. But I also think there has got to be something mentally not right there. The assessment was harsh, but it reflected what many observers had been thinking for years. This wasn't normal behavior. This wasn't a woman who happened to have similar style to her husband's mother. This was a calculated, sustained campaign to become Diana, to inhabit her image, to claim her legacy as her own. To understand the full significance of what Meghan was doing, we must understand how professional photography and fashion shoots actually work. And that's where celebrity photographer Nikki Johnston's analysis becomes crucial. Johnston is one of the United Kingdom's best-known celebrity portrait photographers, with a career spanning decades and subjects ranging from musicians to actors to royals. He understands exactly how high-profile photo shoots are planned, executed, and controlled. During an interview with Lauren the Insider in December 2024, Johnston explained the meticulous process behind magazine cover shoots. "Can you talk the insiders through how the process works?" Lauren asked. "Because we've seen yet again Meghan Markle directly copying Princess Diana and Victoria Beckham, and this isn't by mistake. Can you explain the process of these big production shoots?" Johnston's response was definitive. For a magazine like Harper's Bazaar, nothing is left to chance. There are mood boards created weeks in advance, showing the photographer, stylists, and subject what looks they're trying to achieve. There are reference images pulled from past shoots, iconic photographs that inspire the direction. There are multiple teams involved, stylists choosing every piece of clothing, makeup artists perfecting every detail, hairstylists creating the exact look desired, lighting technicians ensuring the mood is right. And through it all, the subject, especially someone as controlling as Meghan is reported to be, has approval over everything. The idea that Meghan could have ended up in a cross-legged floor pose wearing white without knowing it referenced Diana's famous photograph is, according to Johnston, impossible. Meghan would have known instantly as she was sitting on the floor wearing what she was wearing with her legs in that position wearing a white shirt, Johnston explained. She wouldn't have known exactly what she was recreating. I'm sorry. There's no way around that. The certainty in his professional assessment left no room for ambiguity. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't the photographer's choice that Meghan went along with. This was deliberate recreation, approved if not specifically requested by Meghan herself. But the Harper's Bazaar shoot wasn't the only troubling element. According to multiple reports, Meghan had also recreated Victoria Beckham's poses from previous photo shoots, suggesting a pattern of copying successful, admired women rather than developing her own distinctive visual identity. The psychology behind this behavior is complex and troubling. Tash's use of the word pathological wasn't hyperbole. In psychology, pathological behavior refers to patterns that are abnormal, maladaptive, and potentially harmful. When someone obsessively copies another person's image, speech patterns, and life choices, it can indicate identity disturbance, a difficulty knowing who they are separate from others. But there's another dimension to Meghan's Diana cosplay that makes it even more disturbing. Harry. Prince Harry was 12 years old when his mother died. He walked behind her coffin in front of billions of people, his head bowed, his grief visible to the world. The trauma of that day, of losing his mother so publicly and so violently, shaped everything about who he became. In multiple interviews over the years, Harry spoke about his struggles processing Diana's death. He revealed in a 2017 interview with The Telegraph that he didn't seek therapy until his late 20s, after years of near breakdown. He described feeling on the verge of punching someone and being constantly on the verge of tears. Diana wasn't just Harry's mother. She was his protector, his advocate, the person who made him feel special and loved despite being the spare rather than the heir. Her death left a void in his life that nothing and no one could fill, until Meghan. Multiple sources have suggested that one of Meghan's most effective tools in attracting and keeping Harry was her deliberate evocation of Diana. She dressed like Diana. She spoke about humanitarian causes like Diana. She positioned herself as the woman who could fulfill Diana's legacy, who could be the people's princess that Diana never got to fully become. And Harry, desperate to find meaning in his mother's death, to honor her memory, to continue her work, fell for it completely. It is a way for Meghan, I believe, to manipulate Harry in a really twisted sort of way, Tash observed. The manipulation works on multiple levels. Every time Meghan dresses like Diana, Harry sees his mother. Every time she recreates Diana's poses, Harry is reminded of what he lost. Every time she invokes Diana's name or legacy, Harry feels compelled to support her, to protect her the way he couldn't protect his mother. It's psychological manipulation of the most intimate and painful kind, and the fact that Harry either doesn't see it or chooses not to acknowledge it speaks to how deeply he's under Meghan's influence. The fact that Harry can't see it, and the fact that Harry still chooses to remain married to a woman who is constantly playing his mother, it gives me the ick, Tash said, her disgust evident. She referenced Harry's own disturbing revelation in his memoir Spare, published in January 2023, where he wrote about using his mother's Elizabeth Arden cream on his frostbitten penis while thinking of her. The incident, which shocked readers worldwide, revealed the extent to which Harry's relationship with his mother's memory had become unhealthy, even pathological in its own right. And Meghan, far from helping Harry develop a healthier relationship with Diana's memory, actively exploits it for her own purposes. The consequences of Meghan's Diana obsession extend far beyond disturbing photo shoots. They have shaped the entire trajectory of her relationship with Harry, their decision to leave the royal family, and their current status as exiled royals trying desperately to maintain relevance. When Meghan and Harry conducted their Oprah interview on March 7, 2021, Meghan's invocation of Diana was constant. She compared her own mental health struggles to Diana's. She suggested that, like Diana, she was being persecuted by the institution. She implied that, like Diana, she was a voice for change being silenced by an outdated establishment. The comparisons were strategic. By positioning herself as Diana 2.0, Meghan automatically positioned anyone who criticized her as equivalent to those who had treated Diana badly. It was a brilliant rhetorical move that made criticism of Meghan feel like dishonoring Diana's memory. But it was also fundamentally dishonest. Diana was born into British aristocracy, the daughter of an earl, someone who understood the royal world from childhood. Meghan was an American actress with no connection to British culture or traditions. Diana spent 16 years in the royal family, performing thousands of engagements before her separation from Charles. Meghan spent less than 2 years as a working royal before she and Harry departed. Diana's criticisms of the royal family came after years of genuine attempts to make it work, after documented evidence of how badly she had been treated, after she had given everything to the institution and been broken by it. Meghan's criticisms came after she entered the royal family with apparent expectations that it would immediately change to accommodate her, that her Hollywood experience would translate seamlessly to royal duty, that her desire for control and attention would be met rather than challenged. The differences couldn't be more stark. But by constantly evoking Diana's image, Meghan obscured those differences, trading on Diana's genuine suffering and legacy to excuse her own inability or unwillingness to adapt to royal life. And now, in late 2024, the consequences of Meghan and Harry's choices were becoming painfully clear. The turning point came with the announcement of America's 250th birthday celebrations planned for July 2025. The milestone anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776, would be marked with major events across the United States. And according to multiple sources quoted in the New York Post in December 2024, the royal family would be represented at these celebrations, but not by Harry and Meghan. The royal family is planning to jet over to the U.S. to celebrate America's 250th birthday, but California dwellers Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are set to be iced out, the Post reported, citing multiple sources. Prince William and Catherine were expected to join the historic celebrations. King Charles and Queen Camilla had been invited to Washington, D.C. for a state visit in April 2025 by President Trump if the king's health allowed him to travel, but the Sussexes? Not invited. Obviously, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex aren't working royals, so they will not be invited to any celebrations, a source told the Post. Any invitation would have to come at the behest of the royal family themselves. The exclusion was devastating on multiple levels. Harry and Meghan had moved to California in January 2020, specifically positioning themselves to become America's royal representatives. They had cultivated relationships with Hollywood celebrities, politicians, and media figures. They had presented themselves as the modern face of monarchy, more relatable to Americans than the stuffy British royals. And now, when America celebrated its most significant birthday in decades, the actual working royals would be invited while Harry and Meghan would be left out entirely. This is just such a huge blow to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle because it just shows they are cut out in America now, Dan Wooten observed during his December broadcast. And I don't even think it's just by the Republicans. I think they've just been cut out by the political establishment because the political establishment has worked out these guys are toxic and we want the real royals here. We don't want these grifters. Tash agreed, noting that Harry's popularity in America had dropped to its lowest level ever. I don't think it matters whether you're a Republican or a Democrat in America. Harry and Meghan have actually managed to do something that not many people around the world have. They unite people regardless of their political views. They unite people regardless of what country they're in, with their utter disdain for seeing the couple. The assessment was brutal but accurate. Harry and Meghan had managed the remarkable feat of becoming unpopular across political divides, geographic locations, and demographic groups. Conservatives disliked them for their progressive politics and attacks on tradition. Liberals were increasingly frustrated by their hypocrisy, preaching about climate change while taking private jets, advocating for privacy while selling intimate family details. Even the American media outlets that had initially championed Meghan were turning on her. Even Us Weekly and People magazine, their favorite outlets, they absolutely dropped the bombs on them now as well, Tash noted. I think even the American audience can see it was never the Brits, it was never the royal family. They are the problem. But perhaps the most humiliating consequence of their fall from grace was Harry's upcoming appearance at a pay-to-play real estate conference in Canada. In January 2025, Harry was scheduled to appear at the Ontario Investment and Wealth Advisor Powerhouse event, speaking to real estate professionals about property markets. Tickets cost $500 Canadian, approximately $350 American dollars, and despite Harry's presence, the event hadn't sold out. Royal commentator Tom Sykes, writing for his Royalist Substack, captured the pathos of the situation perfectly. The absurdity of a royal prince who has spent the vast proportion of his life living rent-free in grace and favor mansions and who knows nothing about Ontario property market, speaking at a conference for Ontario realtors is hard to overstate. Sykes continued, "There is a bleakness to the conference website's sell. See Prince Harry in person. Not hear him, not learn from him, just see him." The irony of a man who spent years railing against being commodified by the media now voluntarily compressing himself into a life of paid appearances is inescapable. The degradation was complete. The prince who had once walked alongside his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, at state occasions. The prince who had served his country with distinction in Afghanistan. The prince whose Invictus Games had genuinely helped wounded veterans worldwide. That prince was now reduced to being a curiosity at a real estate conference, paid to be seen rather than heard. It must be deeply depressing for him and his team who not long ago were dreaming he could change the world, Sykes wrote. But Tash, watching the spectacle, felt no sympathy. "I don't have a shred of sympathy for him anymore. He's the one that's done this to himself. It's all of his choices and his actions. And those choices, those actions, all trace back to that blind date on July 1st, 2016, when Harry met a woman who had been studying his mother's image, preparing to become her, ready to use every tool at her disposal to capture a prince's heart. The legacy of Meghan's Diana obsession will be measured in the years ahead, but certain impacts are already clear. First, there's the impact on Diana's own legacy. By constantly invoking and imitating Diana, Meghan has cheapened what Diana represented. Diana's humanitarian work, her genuine connection with suffering people, her evolution from shy bride to confident advocate, all of it has been reduced to a costume that Meghan puts on when it serves her purposes. Photographers, historians, and Diana's genuine admirers see the cosplay for what it is. They see the difference between someone who lived authentically, made real mistakes, suffered genuine consequences, and grew from those experiences, versus someone who is performing a calculated impersonation. Second, there's the impact on Harry himself. By marrying a woman obsessed with his dead mother, Harry has trapped himself in an eternal present where Diana's ghost is constantly present. He can never move on, never develop a healthy relationship with his mother's memory, never see Meghan as separate from Diana. The psychological damage of this dynamic is incalculable. Harry is married to a woman who dresses like his mother, poses like his mother, speaks about causes his mother cared about, all while claiming to be doing it for her own authentic reasons. And Harry, desperate to honor Diana's memory, to finish the work she started, to prove that her death meant something, enables and encourages this twisted dynamic. Third, there's the impact on the monarchy itself. By positioning herself as Diana Reborn, Meghan implicitly positioned the royal family as the villains in Diana's story, the forces that destroyed an innocent woman. This framing did real damage to the institution's reputation, particularly in countries like the United States where understanding of British constitutional monarchy is limited. But as the truth about Meghan's manipulations emerged, as her cosplay became undeniable, as her willingness to use Diana's memory for personal gain became clear, the public began to see through the performance. And in seeing through Meghan's performance, they also gained new appreciation for the genuine royals, William and Catherine, who honor Diana's memory through their work rather than through costume changes. Fourth, there's the broader cultural impact on how we understand authenticity, identity, and performance in the age of social media. Meghan's Diana cosplay represents an extreme version of what many people do online, curating an identity based on what gets attention, copying those they admire, performing a version of themselves rather than being themselves. But most people don't have the resources, platform, or audacity to take it as far as Meghan has. Most people don't recreate iconic photographs from their husband's dead mother's life. Most people don't spend years studying another woman's image and mannerisms to copy them. Meghan's behavior exists on a spectrum, but she's pushed that spectrum to its pathological extreme. And in doing so, she's revealed something disturbing about what happens when the performance becomes the reality, when someone loses the ability to distinguish between who they are and who they're pretending to be. Even in Meghan's attempts to build her own brand through deals with Netflix and Spotify, through her lifestyle website, through her cookbook and other projects, the voice that emerged was always derivative, always borrowed, always performing authenticity rather than being authentic. Her Netflix documentary series, Harry and Meghan, released in December 2022, featured Meghan in carefully staged shots meant to look spontaneous. Her podcast, Archetypes, featured Meghan discussing issues of identity and labeling while apparently lacking any self-awareness about her own complicated relationship with authenticity. Her lifestyle brand projects featured Meghan copying other successful lifestyle brands, from Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop to Victoria Beckham's fashion empire, without adding anything distinctly her own. As Tash observed, Meghan has ruined everything about what she has tried to do. There's no way for her to get out of it because she has already shown us who she is. She can't even try to change it at this point. I don't think she could do it. Meghan has lost the battle with trying to be her own independent woman because we've seen her behind the curtain and it's something we don't like. The metaphor was apt. Meghan had positioned herself as the Wizard of Oz, the powerful figure behind the curtain controlling the narrative. But when the curtain was pulled back, when photographers like Nikki Johnston confirmed that her Diana cosplay was deliberate, when sources revealed her pattern of copying others, the illusion collapsed. There was no authentic Meghan behind the performance. There was just the performance itself. A woman who had spent so long copying others that she no longer knew how to be herself. The story of Meghan Markle's Diana obsession is ultimately about the price of inauthenticity. It's about what happens when someone builds their entire identity, relationship, and public image on imitation rather than authenticity. It's about the psychological cost of living as someone else, of never allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to discover who you actually are. And it's about Harry, a man still grieving his mother nearly 30 years after her death, who found a woman willing to dress up as that mother, to speak like her, to pose like her, to promise to fulfill her legacy. A man so desperate to honor Diana that he couldn't see, or chose not to see, that his wife's obsessive copying of his mother was manipulation rather than tribute. What do you think? Is Meghan's Diana cosplay deliberate manipulation, psychological pathology, or simply unfortunate coincidence? Should Harry confront his wife about her obsessive copying of his dead mother? And what does this pattern reveal about the authenticity of everything Meghan has said and done since entering the royal family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this investigation valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth reporting on the stories the mainstream media won't touch. Because sometimes the most disturbing truths hide in plain sight, visible to anyone willing to look closely at the carefully staged photographs, the calculated poses, and the woman behind the Diana mask.